Hello and welcome to another Steelers Depot live stream here on this Memorial Day, Monday, May 27th. I am Alex Kozora. Joining me as always is Bryan of SteelersDepot.com here on this holiday for the next hour to answer your Steelers questions. We do not take a week off here, staying on track, and so hopefully everyone having a happy and safe and healthy Memorial Day overall. Dave, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. As always, I have spent today finishing up looking at all the targets that Roman Wilson had throughout his college career. I think I found video of all of them, if you can believe it or not, over the 4 seasons. I put up the 2021 season a couple of days ago. I did that after the 2023 season because of him playing more outside in 2021. And then I turned around today, put up the 2022 season where he played more in the slot. And while I had everything set up, ready to go, I went ahead and started to put together the 2020 season, which obviously not a lot of targets in those. But that should go up, I think, hopefully tomorrow on Tuesday. And then I'll write a recap post about everything and what all it kind of showed there after that.
Looking forward to that, and thank you for doing the legwork and presenting that in such an easy and quick manner to everyone checking out that post. Be sure to get your questions in until 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to send us a super chat, you can move to the front of the line, no obligation to do so, but we always appreciate super chats just the same. Want to give a quick shout out to the people I see in the chat right now who are here on this holiday. We have Lumberzack and Mike and John. These guys are always here in our live streams. We got Keith, Simon from the UK, midnight in the UK, staying up with us. Appreciate you, Simon. Daniel, ODG Dorkman, and Double HH is here as well. So we'll dive right on into your questions. We'll start off with Lumberzack94, who says, "Hey fellas, cheating here and asking a two-parter. Firstly, Alex, on a scale of 1 to Danny Smith, how excited are you for the new Kickoff? Seems to be the fun talking point for OTAs. Very excited. I'm full bubblegum Danny Smith on this one. I don't know exactly how it's going to go. I don't think the NFL and the special teams coordinators know exactly how this will look and play out, but that's going to be the fun part and add excitement to a play that's been pretty dead for several seasons."
Yeah, I concur. I look forward to see, and look, I'm a traditionalist at heart, but it would be nice to see that play become more relevant. And we obviously saw what the Steelers do with Cordell Patterson, signing him right after the news became official there with him, and or with the rule, and it'll just be interesting to see how the teams around the league try to attack this and the new rules. So yeah, I look forward to see how this plays out with the rule.
We should note as well, right after the podcast, in traditional fashion, maybe a couple hours after, some Steelers news came in, reportedly according to Neil Stratton of Inside the League. Pittsburgh is hiring Jim Knoll to be an area scout to work the Northeast, and so Omar Khan adding to the scouting department. Knoll previously in past years working with the Cleveland Browns and the Chiefs. He played safety at Boston College, briefly in the NFL. So that is I love nerding out about the scouting department and the movings and shakings there. So I was quite happy to see that piece of news.
Where are we going to see him show up at, you think?
Looks like Northeast, and so your Boston Colleges, your UConns, that kind of territory that I think partially replaced maybe some of the Phil Kreidler stuff last year, but also Dave Pettit, who had that area before he became a pro scout and then left the team sometime in 2024, it appears.
All right,
Lumberzack, part 2 of his question. Who do you think the next player the Steelers should extend? Most would say Freiermuth, which I am all for, but Daniels is the much more attractive signing to keep this bonus for continuity. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really have an order. I just have a list of guys that I would like to try to extend and try to get that all accomplished from now until week 1. Freiermuth can certainly be on that list. I would put Daniels on that list. I don't know if the team will. Those would be the two you probably start with, and then Cam, of course, but that seems to be a separate part of your question.
Yeah, looking at the guard market right now, looking at right guard market specifically, coming off of some of these big contracts that some of these guys who got paid this offseason. Let's see, Robert Hunt got paid. Kevin Dotson got paid at $16 million new money average. Even Cesar Ruiz didn't he got paid at $11 million. Would you consider James Daniels a better player than a guy like Cesar Ruiz?
I don't know exactly, not watching Ruiz the way that I watched Daniels, but I think that sounds comparable, especially considering Daniels is still, only 26, and in the prime of his career, this is the time for him to, earn that big money deal.
And let's see, James Daniels' current deal is $8.83333 million there. So you would expect he'd be looking for a deal stronger than that last one that he got there. So, I mean, could it happen? Yeah, it could. They've got the cash to do it, and he's still young enough. And but they did obviously draft, interior linemen this year, and so it'll be interesting to watch play out to see if he's a guy. Freiermuth, without a doubt, I will be surprised if Freiermuth does not get an extension.
Anybody else you put on that list? I don't know if you would have considered Najee and Cam, but I guess the question probably more towards the younger players, which of course would include Najee.
Yeah, I think something gets done with Cam Hayward. We've talked about that kind of ad nauseum, these last several weeks here, and with Najee. I mean, that's another one. I just kind of the conversation that you and I had in the podcast, about a week and a half ago or whatnot, is there a possibility that maybe they didn't exercise his fifth-year option so that they could technically say that he was in the final year of his, contract and do the extension that way so that they're not setting any sort of precedent? It's just one of those tinfoil hat things there. But I mean, to me, why it was only 6.7 something, million as far as picking up that option. Why wouldn't you have done that and just turn around and given him a deal? So I would bet against it happening for Najee, but that doesn't mean that it obviously can't happen.
Sure, I'm in a similar camp. What I would have done had I been GM, I would have picked up the fifth-year option on Najee. I think you would have as well, and then I doubt I would have given him a second contract. I can certainly see the lack of success in recent years of paying running backs a second contract and how poorly those deals have worked out. Najee being an older guy, having more mileage on him, I would have done the fifth-year option, get him through 2025, no second contract. I think that would have been the best approach. We'll see what path Pittsburgh ultimately takes.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see the next time that he decides to talk to the media. He obviously didn't do that in week one of OTAs. Kind of wondering if he'll do it this next week of OTAs. Is training camp going to be the next time that we hear from him?
Sure. Good question. Got another super chat. He sent many over the last several live streams from Double HH. $20. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hopefully you're enjoying your holiday. Sounds like you are. Maybe with some. He says he ate his quota of lobster rolls. That's a pretty good day overall. But his question says, June 1st, already almost here. If you had to bet Alex's house, not Dave's house, but my house, which roster cut or trade would be the bet to be here shortly after June 1st, I assume? So basically, who's somebody that could be one of those, trade cut candidates that may find their way to Pittsburgh here shortly?
Yeah, if we're talking the type that moves the needle, I would, if I'm only betting Alex's house, I would. It's hard to get away from the whole Cortland Sutton thing. I've kind of given up hope on the DK Metcalf thing and Brandon Ayuk. I mean, if you believe the reports and the kind of money that he's wanting, that doesn't really seem plausible. I guess Juwan Jennings is another guy that you could potentially look at. Obviously the 49ers have got a crowded room as well, so that might be another one that you look at.
That's a good suggestion. And also, somebody had mentioned, I believe that Zach Azzani had coached him at Tennessee for at least a year. And so there's even another kind of layer of connection there on top of all the other things that would make some sense about maybe trying to acquire Jennings as opposed to Ayuk, which would be so much more costly draft capital and financially. I don't have a good answer. I hadn't looked at the list too much. We'll see what players do get cut and who becomes available, and I'll kind of look at it and evaluate from there. I've maintained that if you are going to trade for a wide receiver, Courtland Sutton has always made the most amount of sense because Denver would seem to be the most team willing to part with him given his general unhappiness with the Broncos right now. The relatively cheap cost to trade for him and to potentially extend him. He's a fit for what they're looking for. Big outside receiver, the Russell Wilson connection, the Zach Azzani connection. He was his coach in Denver for several years. No one aligns more neatly than Courtland Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
But good question there, and thank you again for the super chat. You guys could also like the stream. Would appreciate that and bring more of Steelers Nation in on this holiday. Mike Adesso has his question, says, "Hi guys, happy holiday to all. Hope yins are enjoying the day. I'm going to miss the chat, but wanted to at least throw one question out. And basically, it looks like the same question as Double HH about the June 1st cut. And so, which players they could potentially acquire. He asked, do you see any Steelers being surprisingly cut? I don't think anybody would be, and not for cap June 1st related reasons.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I mean, other than someone getting waived injured at this point right now, there's no reason, even for cap purposes, to do anybody as a June 1st right now, I wouldn't think.
Sure. John Pennington says, hello, Dave and Alex. How concerned are you with the defensive line depth with Marshall, Leal, and Loudermilk not bringing that much to the table? Happy Memorial Day also. Same to you, John. Dave, I'll let you start this one off. How concerned are you with the lack of D-line depth?
Look, I think you would surely like to see some of these guys step up this year. Guys like Leal, and I don't think you're going to add to that room significantly. You'd like to see Larry Ogunjobi have a more season like he did a couple of years ago for sure. So moderately concerned because of the fact that you wonder, you just wonder how many snaps are you going to need to put on Cameron Hayward, and obviously you think Keanu Benton can take that next step, which he should be able to, but just from a depth perspective, I think you want to see a couple of these guys step up.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to help be that extra rotational pass rusher? There's three in Hayward, Ogunjobi, although he struggled and been inconsistent as a pass rusher and overall his game. And then Benton, can you get a fourth? That'd be ideal. Can you get somebody to take some of the workload off of Hayward so he doesn't have to play 80% of the snaps the way that he does so routinely? That'd be ideal. I mean, the depth, some guys emerge. You can probably make it work. The bigger concern is who is that long-term replacement for Cam Hayward? That guy does not exist on this roster right now. Lowry, Loudermilk, Leal, unless one of those guys just has a complete 180 of their career, it's not going to happen. And so that's the concern is, Hayward's not going to be here forever, and yet Pittsburgh has been acting as if Hayward will play 10 more years. But good question there, John, and thank you for the chat and the question as always. Keith Pinkelman says, I see Calvin Austin III as the wide receiver 2. Who do you think the wide receiver 2 will be by the start of the season? It's a good question. I don't have a great answer for it. I think the hope is it'll be somebody not currently on this team. If you had to stick with just the internal current options, would it be Roman Wilson, despite the reservations about him as an outside receiver, the lack of experience working off a press? He might be the most talented guy to fill that role.
I mean, barring you don't go out and get somebody else of significance, after June 1st here, it feels like it's a lot to ask for a guy like Roman Wilson to come in and be the number 2. In other words, I think you see it more like a committee approach.
Okay, so let me ask it this way, though. Pittsburgh, the first snap of the season comes out in 12 personnel. You got Pickens to one side. Who would be the receiver to the other side opposite of him?
Yeah, that's you got a lot of time to think about that between now and week 1. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if guys like Van Jefferson and Quez and who all makes the roster. I think Roman Wilson, I think, is in the driver's seat right now.
I think it's pretty jumbled up, and you let those guys compete in battle, and not all those names we mentioned are going to make it. You throw in, as Keith did, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller. We talked about some intrigue with Marquez Callaway, Denzel Mims, a former pedigree guy that has never worked out in the NFL. Hopefully you can find something out of that group. Somebody emerges as they push and compete with each other, but again, ideally you're finding somebody who is not currently on this team. Let's see. Simon, let's get this question because I know it's late out there in the UK. Says, hey, Alex and Dave, how do you see our safety rotation working this season, both behind Minkah and at that other safety spot? Well, the starting safeties will be Minkah Fitzpatrick, of course, and then Deshaun Elliott at strong safety. I would suspect that KZ will come in dime packages. Killebrew will not have a defensive role out of the gate unless injuries occur, as they did last year. So that's essentially my answer. Ryan Watts, we'll see. He's got to make the team first and prove himself on special teams. But I would say Minkah and Elliott, and then KZ in dime packages.
Yeah, that sounds right until something else presents itself. Obviously, Trenton Thompson, I think, coming off of that, neck injury or whatnot that he had. And Ryan Watts, just finally cutting his teeth in that first week of OTAs at safety. So that's a lot to ask for him to make that progression to playing time right out of the chute there. So yeah, I think those are your top three right there, and kind of end the story.
I do like you mentioned Trenton Thompson. I was a fan of what he did last year. He was a mid-camp signing, and I thought he flashed in the summer, and then I thought he played relatively well. He's got some size. He can hit and can cover. There's a kind of a well-rounded skill set there. Not the best athlete in the world in space, but I liked him coming downhill and playing in zone. Had a big pick against Cincinnati, against Jake Browning, to help kind of jumpstart that game and get Pittsburgh to victory in that first matchup against Cincinnati. So it'll be a good battle.
And amazing to go back and remember, all the snaps that Rowe played, right?
Right, Eric Rowe, yeah. And he played well, too. I mean, he came in, and Patrick Peterson shifting from corner to safety. Kind of leads us into our next question here from John Pennington. Says, Dave and Alex, do you think Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin will make the adjustment to defend the middle of the field better this season? Can they just be healthy to have the guys to do that? You lose all your inside backers last year, all your safeties last year. I mean, you're just playing so hurt at the end of the season. That, I think, was one reason for that issue. So if you're just healthier, you'll be naturally better.
Yeah, it feels like if you just keep the spine healthy, it'll be better almost by default. It needs to be better. And yeah, you hit on it. You go through all those linebackers that they went through, and obviously missing Minkah and trying to piecemeal it together with the guys that they did. You think health alone would solve that problem.
What are you expecting from Patrick Queen in coverage this year? He's a good athlete. I don't know if he's ever been regarded as a quality coverage linebacker, though.
I don't know if I've looked a lot at his coverage since he was signed. I've looked a little bit. I mean, he obviously can move, and he'll give you a guy that can run with some guys back there. So that sure, in and of itself should help. How much they're going to play. What's the coverage you're going to lean on more this year?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends on the situation. They might try to be a bit more man heavy this year. They had to play a lot of zone late last season because of all the injuries. So yeah, I don't have a great inclination of where that'll go coverage wise. Queen will be the every down linebacker, and so he'll have to play well there. I don't think it's his calling card. I think he's a good blitzer, good against the run, sideline to sideline, chase kind of guy. I don't think he's ever been excellent in coverage, but certainly will be counted upon to be one of those guys this year.
I mean, Queen's, at least from what I have seen, he seems to be smart recognition-wise and diagnosing things, and, especially if you get him once, you're probably not going to get him again kind of thing.
Sure, and his game has improved over the last two seasons especially, in part maybe because of Roquan Smith being there, but also Queen's just game has grown by working and improving and correcting mistakes, as you pointed out. Got a question here from, and I might butcher the first name, so I apologize. Tadasio Leahy. Dave, do you have love for Pickens now? I don't think he ever did not have love of George Pickens. Excuse the double negative there. You've always liked George Pickens and appreciated what his game could be. Oh yeah, absolutely. I just if there's anything that I worry about him is how does he react if he's not in games where he's not getting the football, just the attitude aspect. I've
have worried about that first couple of seasons with him. Look, I mean, go back to the things I said about him coming out after he was drafted and all. Tremendous body control. He can make the catches that a lot of wide receivers in the NFL can't make. And the only other real knock on him coming out of Georgia was he was not a refined route runner. Mm-hmm. I think he made strides in that area last season, and I think hopefully we'll see more of that this season. Look, I just tweeted out a video during that first week of OTAs, I think, saying, man, I can't wait to watch George Pickens play with new quarterbacks now. That should play in his favor. And obviously with Arthur Smith coming in as OC. Go back to listen and listen to the things that I've said about him on the podcast and things I've written about him and things that I've tweeted about him. The main issue I have had with him overall is just the attitude, especially in games that he's not getting to football. And look, I'd be pissed off too with that. But a lot of times you got to be able to keep that stuff in check.
Sure, we discussed that on the podcast today, and I said, and I misspoke slightly. I said winning cures everything. I should have said winning masks everything. It keeps some of those things below the surface to pop up when you're on losing streaks. I mean, if they're winning, you have to be happy, and I'm sure Pickens will be. But this is a big year for George Pickens with a better quarterback play, the number one receiver on this team unquestionably. And if he has a really impressive 2024 season, we're talking payday. We're talking contract extension for him next off season. And the receiver market is obviously incredibly hot right now. You're going to get Ayuk likely paid, Justin Jefferson paid. It's going to push up the deals even more. And you saw A.J. Brown get signed, St. Brown get signed. And so, you're talking big money for Pickens, and I'm sure he's aware of that fact.
Sure. I mean, this is a big year for him to put it together and get paid. I mean, we'll obviously see if the Steelers are the one to pay him or not. But, obviously if the Steelers don't pay him after this year, the market will be right for him to get paid somewhere else.
Sure. Trevor Hamilton says Pat Freiermuth will be wide receiver 2. True or false, Dave? Pat Freiermuth will finish with the second most receptions on the Steelers.
I don't think you better have a good reason to vote against that.
I'm with you. Now, his career high is, 63, I think? He had 63 his first 2 years. Will he surpass that? Will he set a career high in receptions this year?
Look, you especially early on in the season, you might have to lean on a guy heavy like that in this offense until someone does make, especially if they don't go out and get a bona fide playmaker here in these next several weeks here to be the number 2 wide receiver. So I could foresee something like that happening where, and look, regardless of really what happens, you need Freiermuth to have 50 or more receptions in this season here, especially on the fact that you're probably going to extend him this off season on top of it, and you need him to stay on the field. Obviously, should have better quarterback play on top of it and all. So. Yeah, like I said, you better have a good reason to vote against what the statement the listener just put out there.
Sure, if you pay him, you're going to throw to him, and I think both things will ultimately happen in Pittsburgh this year. So Double HH says, concerned about Freiermuth getting hurt, and that's valid, but putting injuries aside and just looking at how the offense is constructed in a tight end heavy, friendly Arthur Smith offense, lacking other receiver options outside of George Pickens. I think Wilson is some veteran quarterback that might target that tight end more often. I could see this being a career year in terms of receptions and maybe yards for Pat Freiermuth. Next question comes from Mark Miller. Good to hear from you, Mark. He says, do you think Connor Williams could still be an option if he clears medically, center or guard? I think at this point, you draft Frazier, you have Herbig there. I don't have a lot of interest in adding a guy like Connor Williams.
Yeah, if you did, it would have to come uber cheap, and I figure if he can if Connor can prove that he's healthy to a team, we'll see how injuries impact the league moving forward on through the summer and all. There might be a market for him more than minimum per se, but at this point, it's only you fully expect Frazier to be your week 1 guy and probably for a guy like Herbig to be the number 2 guy.
Right. There's probably some projection of Nate Herbig with him not playing much at center before. I know he's played some, but after being the backup last year and getting reps this year in the spring throughout the summer, there's probably enough comfort that says you don't have to go add somebody like a Connor Williams. Next question will come from H. Bar Farkle. What a great username that is. What do you think about Corey Trice Jr.? I'm happy that he's generally healthy, that he's back there on the field. I know he said he's not cleared for contact, but that's okay. There's no contact this time of year anyway, so that's big for him. Other than that, he's just a big unknown, right, Dave?
Yeah, my view on him is cautiously optimistic. Man, it's good to see him back running around. It doesn't sound like he'll be given the full go for contact until maybe training camp gets underway. But this is a guy that obviously fell in the draft a couple years ago because of the medical concerns, and unfortunately, that was kind of justified because of the injury, another knee injury that he suffered. He's no stranger to overcoming those, but now he's got to get himself on the field and stay healthy. And, is he going to be the starter out of chute? Probably not. But you need some depth guys that can play outside that are long like that. He's definitely had some highlights on his Purdue tape overall, and the Steelers like those long guys like that, and he'll have to contribute, I would imagine, on special teams. So just cautiously optimistic, mainly just of the health aspect of it. He's got to stay healthy and on the field all summer long, and then make the roster, and then just see how things play out from that point forward there.
If you had to guess or make an evaluation now, who has the leg up? Darius Rush, Corey Trice, or are they truly neck and neck?
Man, we didn't get to see all that much of Rush last year, and it was in kind of unique package type situations.
But he did play in practice.
Right. I would still, Trice, although it didn't last very long, Trice was having a pretty good camp, wasn't he, before he went down injured?
He was, although it was not in full pads, and so the evaluation a little more difficult. I would give Rush the slight edge because he's got more of that special teams gunner background, and he had played last year, which helped some. But again, like receiver, you go into camp, let these guys compete, and make a decision from there. Mm-hmm. Next question comes from Bryce Jennings. Should we bring back receiver Hakeem Butler to play outside receiver? He's a big body and in the lead for Offensive Player of the Year in the UFL. Dave, should they try Butler again?
No, that ship, in my opinion, should have sailed now. He had his chance, and look, I haven't sat there and watched his tape from the what do they call it now, the UFL,
United Football League.
Yeah, UFL. Obviously, I watched a lot of the stuff last year after they signed him and all like that. I would imagine drops are still an issue with him. Those, the same bugaboos that have been associated with him throughout his career showed up. I think, in the limited time that he was with the Steelers last summer and all. So I kind of view that ship as sailing.
Me as well. Maybe he'll go somewhere. Another team will give him a chance. He's having a good spring, but Pittsburgh tried it once. No need to try it again. Anthony McFarland's picking it up in UFL. He had a pretty quiet start. He had a good game this past weekend. I'm not advocating for him to return to Pittsburgh. He won't, but I think he'll be in a camp somewhere in the NFL this summer, so good for McFarland.
Yeah, he should land some. If you got the Wards and the Perrines able to latch on like they have, you would think a guy like McFarland should be able to latch on somewhere. The
only concern is the UFL's schedule. They're playing later this year. Butler signed on May 16th, I think it was, last year, and the UFL season runs through early to mid-June. And so you miss all of OTAs, all of mini camp. You'll be ready for training camp, but that is a tighter turnaround to get your body ready and get on that moving train. So that's kind of a downside. Don't know why the UFL is beginning their season later this year.
Ratings, money. It's all about money.
Okay, fair point. I walked into that one. Let's see. Keith says, since the Steelers invested in O-linemen, what do you think will be the top 3 needs next year? It can change and will change so much in all likelihood. I think D-line certainly can't be ignored in terms of heavy investments much longer. We'll see at quarterback what happens there with Wilson and Fields. Ideally, it won't be a need, but it certainly could be. You look at running back. receiver. I mean, those are some things off the top, but again, the complexion and the structure of a season can change so much from, right now until that point.
Here's one main thing. Hopefully his statement of having the offensive line taken care of it holds true. It looks like that way right now. So let's hope that if this team has to draft an offensive lineman at all, or decides to draft an offensive lineman at all in 2025, it would be a 6th or 7th round, just look at kind of guy there. Although, I mean, they could get in a situation where they need a 6th or 7th round tackle to look at, as a backup kind of guy, maybe that you could develop or something along those lines. But if you're looking at top of the draft, start looking at the guys that are 6'5", 290 pounds
on the D-line.
On the D-line, yeah. That would be a place to probably start as far as early round draft pick goes. You wouldn't think this team would need an edge early in next year's draft from where we sit right now. Hopefully, inside linebackers addressed enough. I don't know, maybe a strong safety type might be one of those 2nd, 3rd round guys. I can envision this team, depending on what, if they go out and get a number 2, more bona fide wide receiver here in these next several weeks. I could foresee wide receiver being drafted in the first 3 rounds next year from where we sit here right today.
How about
what
corner?
else?
Corner with Porter, and you don't know what you're going to have next year.
Yeah, that's plausible. That is plausible for sure.
I might even put it in my top 3 with Jackson, a free agent, and you don't know what you're going to get from Rush and Trice in that group. If anything, I would probably say if I had to give 3 right now, and again, it's going to change so much, the words mean little, but I would say D-line, corner, and I'm going to assume they're going to get a receiver of some caliber. It's either that or running back. I'll give the edge to wide receiver. I'll say wide receiver, corner, and D-line.
All right, so everybody write that down. Let's see
Please do not.
We come.
Write it down.
It's very plausible what you just said, right?
Sure, it is. But I mean, again,
but
the season
changes.
Right. It all changes so much. But that's where I think things are at currently. A question kind of combined from John and Keith about who's the tight end 2, how many passes will Darnell Washington see in this offense. I don't think we'll see a ton of receptions in volume and number, more than last year. He had 7, I think, last year. I think he'll get more red zone looks, though. Smith likes to distribute the ball in the red zone. Washington's size is obviously attractive, so it might be a 20 reception, 3 touchdown kind of a year is where I'm loosely at with Darnell Washington.
If you were to put an over on from where we sit right now today, which is dangerous to do, but would you put kind of the over under of receptions, something that would attract action on both sides of the line for Darnell with total receptions in 2024? Would it be like 19 and a half?
I'd put it right at 17 and a half to give you the one per game kind of line there.
You think you'd attract enough action on the under on that?
I think most people would take the over, but this is still a guy that had 7 receptions last year in a run-heavy offense, and he's not going to be, he's going to be the, I don't know, in terms of the receiving game, 4th, 5th type of option at best, and so that does not always mean a ton of receptions in overall volume.
All right, let's test that. Everybody in the chat right now, if the over-under for receptions on Washington was 17 and a half, and you're making a bet right now, are you taking the over or the under on that?
All right,
let's see how much action you get on the under.
All right, the Steelers Depot sportsbook we're putting on the fly here. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what you guys have to say, so put that in the chat. Mark Miller is saying over. I think most people will take the over, but I think that's a good... I wonder what that number would be where you get that really good 50-50 split in terms of the action, but I think 17.5 is actually a decent line to put on it.
All right. Looks like a lot of the first 3 people are saying over there even on 17.5. I wonder how many of them would take the under on 19.5.
Rob's taking the under on 17.5, and so they got 1 vote for the under. And speaking of Rob, he says, were there anyone saying that Patrick Peterson would have such a fall in his game, and can you see Patrick working on his skill set and having a comeback year in Pittsburgh? He deserves a chance. I think, Dave, we talked about that a lot. The question, signing a 32, 33-year-old corner and how much longer he could play, especially on the
Right.
outside. Peterson certainly seems to be pining to make a comeback, and he wants to return to Pittsburgh, talking about, I'll play nickel. I don't want to be on the bench, but I'll play inside. I wouldn't say he deserves a chance. I don't think most NFL players don't deserve a chance, but you have to add something in the slot here. They've really not addressed that besides Beanie Bishop.
Even as thin as this roster is and the uncertainty right now, I wouldn't get in a hurry to ring his phone just yet. I don't think. I would like to see some things play out in OTAs and mandatory minicamp and maybe on even into the start of camp before I start ringing that phone.
But what are you looking for? I mean, you got young guys, generally unproven guys. I mean, I get the veteran in there as soon as possible, which might be good for the young guys.
I mean, I guess the other aspect of it is how much is he looking to get here,
Can't be a whole lot at this point. He's a free agent here in May. No one's beating down his door. I'm not saying they have to sign Peterson.
Does he really want to sign for a vet benefit contract?
I mean, probably no.
Wouldn't it be in his best interest to wait until see how things transpire around the league?
Sure. I mean, if you're telling me it's $3 million, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'm not saying they have to sign Peterson. My point is, I'd get the vet, as soon as you can. Why wait? Get the guy. I mean, it matters less for Peterson because he's been in the system, but I'd still like the veteran to help the rookies and just have that box checked before you start training camp as opposed to partially into training camp.
I mean, more than anything, he'd be great for the room, obviously.
Yeah, but again, whether it's him, whether it's somebody else, I mean, obviously, Cam Sutton, I don't know legally where he's at, what his next court stuff is, but it matters less now that it's no longer felony related. Really, the thing to watch with the Sutton situation is the NFL. When do they come in on punishment? And they tend to wait until legal things are wrapped up and done. There's finality to it, and who knows how long that could take.
True.
All right, next question. Got a couple more left here. Let's see. 007. BG says, what do you think about us getting Lockett from Seattle maybe after June 1st? Is it wishful thinking? Dave, weigh in on Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, they restructured his contract a few weeks ago, I believe. Let me pull it up real quick here. And thus it would be very, very surprising at this point if they moved him at this point after going ahead and restructuring his contract this offseason.
So basically, you don't see any path in which they get Tyler Lockett.
No, I don't.
Same. Let's see. Next question was coming from 007. What do you think about the Steelers' schedule? Difficult. Obviously, the back half looks pretty brutal, but I think people are overlooking the challenges of the first 5 games at Atlanta, at Denver, home to the Chargers, Colts, and then Cowboys in week 5. Not as hard as the end, but that is not an easy slate either at the beginning.
Yeah, you could probably put me in the category of maybe underestimating it, but so we got that interesting question on the podcast a couple of episodes ago of, all right, would you flip the schedule? And I think both of our answers was no.
Right.
On that. Much rather, even though 3 of the first 4 are on the road, I'd much rather take my chances against Denver and what they call their quarterback situation right now.
Orphan dogs. That's
there you
phrase
go.
For it.
And obviously Atlanta in week 1, and the new coaching staff and Kirk Cousins' first game back from the injury and trying to get settled into the offense. And yeah, I realize that game's on the road for the Steelers, but I'll take my chances there. I'll take my chances on the road in against Denver with their quarterback situation. Obviously, the Chargers are going to be a tough home game. Because of the quarterback situation that they've got a good young quarterback in Herbert there. And then what was the 4th game?
It's at Indy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Richardson in his short time showed some things. So,
and they beat the snot out of the Steelers last year.
Yeah, there's some concern there. So, but all that said, I certainly wouldn't flip the schedule. That's for sure. So sure. I take my chances with the first quarter. And look, they the way that second, and a lot of things can change, as we said. I mean, you sit here and look at the schedule the moment it's released and analyze it. And the way I did last year, looking at it, let's look at all the tackles or all the right tackles that TJ Watt will play in 2023. And by the time some of those matchups happened, they didn't come to fruition because of injury or whatnot and all. So, but all that's to be said that I would take the schedule. If I have to have it this way or flipped, I would take it the way it is right now.
I try to look at just overall structure and layout as opposed to hyper focusing on the teams because, we already knew the teams they'd be playing. We just didn't know the order. And as you said, things will change so much from now until week 3, week 7, week 17. It's impossible to really predict that kind of stuff. But 3 or first 4 games of the year on the road, 4 of your last 7 on the road. Now, your last 2 are at home, which is one small benefit, but that kind of structure, not my favorite thing overall. Benjamin, though, says silver linings on the schedule: Sunday night, Monday night, and Christmas all at home. Both Bengals games, we get 10 or 11 days rest beforehand. So fair points there. There are some benefits, some silver linings, at least for that Chiefs game. It is at home on the short week. That'll help a little bit. So there are a couple silver linings. The last 2 games at home to Kansas City, home to the Bengals, but still not loving the overall structure. Randy Wagner, nice comment. We always appreciate Alex and Dave and all the Steeler fans here, and we appreciate you as well. Randy says, it's early, but do you already see a positive influence with Arthur Smith as our offensive coordinator? It is very early. Obviously, hope springs eternal this time of year. But yeah, I would probably say so. Just
based on what we've watched the last several seasons alone. I don't care what the cookie looks like right now. It's got to taste better, right?
You hope so. Really feel like it can't taste much worse. A guy that seems to be competent and can run the basic tenets of an NFL offense. There's some confidence in that, but obviously they're in shorts right now, and it's really hard to get a gauge on that. But I would say some early confidence with Arthur Smith. All right, next question comes from. Let me go back and find it here. With the new kickoff rules, this comes from Rob Lightfoot. Do you see some teams being that much better than others in special teams? Who are the better special teams coaches in the NFL? Yeah, I think there'll be a disparity, especially early as teams try to figure things out. And hopefully Pittsburgh can benefit from immediately signing Cordell Patterson the second that the NFL announced that rule change back in March. The best special teams coaches, Dave Taub, in Kansas City, I think is certainly up there. I think the Bengals special teams coordinator's been there for a long time as well. And that's a good rabbit hole for me to go down, but those are some of the first names and teams who come to mind.
There should be a lot of stealing going on early in the season here with special teams coaches saying, oh, that's interesting to see what they did there. I wonder if we can do that.
Yeah, I think so. I think there'll be a lot of that copying and borrowing of homework, and I think teams will have different approaches to how the kick return game looks in terms of who they employ as the return men, the blockers in front, and one of the guys on screen right now, Harbaugh, it was a special teams coordinator, and that's his background, and so he's got that kind of background that makes him a good coach from that lens.
Let me throw this out to the chat, and you, Alex. Over under 1.5 on week 1 kickoff returns around the league of a pass, because you got to have 2 guys back, right?
Right.
All right. Over under 1.5 of a attempted pass on a kickoff by a team in week 1 of the season.
Now, you're not talking success. You're just talking the attempt of a pass.
Attempt of a pass. That's a
great question. I will take the under. I think teams will be a little scared to do that stuff early. And is it going to be – they can't move. Will it be harder to do that because the distance has been closed, but the coverage team can't run until the ball is fielded? I feel like it's a little too risky with all this unknown for coordinators.
Will we see at least one?
In week 1 specifically?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see some funky stuff. I think we'll see some reverses, some handoffs. I think a pass might be a little too dicey.
Okay.
Over under 2.5 reverses, handoffs, a la AB's first touchdown. in week 1 on kickoffs across the NFL.
I would take the under. You know what? I just got a feeling that I would go over the 1.5 on the pass attempts.
On the pass, any reason on pass specifically?
I just think I think you might see some creativity there.
I'll take the over on some sort of handoff, some sort of exchange between. Now they are spaced further apart, which may make it a little harder to get close together on the return. They can't move until the ball is fielded too. I mean, well, I guess they can. Yeah, how does that work? I mean, obviously they can move freely just at any point when the ball is kicked to field the ball, correct?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at that video.
That would have to make the most amount of sense. So I'll take the over though. I think you'll see some weird stuff. I don't know exactly what it will be. I don't know if it'll be passes, but I think you'll see some interesting things.
Okay.
I wonder how many offensive linemen we're going to see. I think we're going to see somebody like try to put out 5 offensive linemen and just try, at least in the preseason, and see how it looks.
Look, I think you're going to see some heavy looks out there.
Yeah, I think
because teams wanting to treat it almost like a run.
Sure. You know? The XFL, where it comes from, they said a lot of their teams approached it like a run play with guards pulling, traps almost. And so I think it'll be very, very interesting to see in the preseason and in the regular season. All right, next question comes from John. What young players are you looking forward to seeing in camp this year? For me, Coletto and Fisher. I mean, that's a bunch of names. We talked about Marquez Callaway, not a super young player, but somebody to watch. Dylan Cook's the guy I've been a fan of for a long time, or for a year, I should say. Watching him in camp. Beanie Bishop will be one of the top names given his slot corner ability.
I'm assuming we're not naming draft picks here. Because that's an obvious. But I think Alex hit on some. Dylan Cook. It's a big summer for him. Oh boy,
Jeremiah Moon. See him in the Steelers
Jeremiah
uniform.
Moon. Yeah, I mean, look, you got several third-year players. You expected to make the jumps. The Calvin Austin III's, the DeMarvin Leals. Certainly, add to the list of guys to watch. We named Beanie Bishop as far as undrafted guys go. Geez, who else?
I mean, that's a good chunk of them right there. I think Coletto, who John...
Trice for obvious reasons,
Yeah, I think Coletto, as John mentioned, is interesting. I dug in his background. He played quarterback, he played fullback, he played running back, he played linebacker at Oregon State. He won the Paul Hornung Award one year for college football's most versatile player, which is actually pretty impressive and pedigree number of names who have won that award in the last decade or so. So, I mean, I don't know what he'll be. I don't know what his fit's going to be, but interesting name to certainly watch. All right, next question comes from, let's see, actually a comment from Justin Watson said, I appreciate Alex and the Steelers Depot guys always do a good job keeping the focus on actual football and not the clickbait garbage. We appreciate that, Justin. We certainly do the best we can, especially this time of year. Adam says, what about a guy like Olave from the Saints? They don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. I think it'd be a hard sell to get Chris Olave away from the Saints.
Yeah, I would agree. What's his contract look like over
there? On his rookie deal still? I don't think he signed his deal yet.
Yeah, he is still on his rookie deal. It looks like just a $985,000 base salary this year. He did have a roster bonus that looks like comes due the 5th day of training camp. So if they were to deal him, not saying that they will, they would probably do that before the 5th day of training camp, because it's a 1.47, almost $1.472 million roster bonus for him. But I mean, what motivation do they have to get rid of him at this point? And if they were, why wouldn't they have done that during the draft or whatnot? So I would find it hard to believe that they would part with him now.
When is he due to get paid? After this year? When is he eligible?
He runs through 2025. Did they declined his 5th year option, didn't they? Or let's see, that would have been that would be after this year. They would have to make the decision next year after this season on his 5th year option, right? Because he was a first round draft pick there. So a selling point, if they were going to try to sell him off via a trade prior to the 5th day of training camp, would be that hey, you still got the 5th-year option decision coming up on him as well too. So I don't think it happens, but if it did happen, it feels like it would happen before the 5th day of training camp for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good points there by you, Dave. And just a quick sidebar, pulled up this article that Clayton had written that went up, I think, at midnight. The fewest play action by any team in the NFL since 2019, Pittsburgh. The bottom 3, including last year with 80 play action attempts. We're going to see that number jump up big time under Arthur Smith. So just good stuff there from Mark Clayton Eckert. Kopeka says, why no blocking fullback on the roster? Good question. I thought somebody would get at it. I mean, you have Coletto, you have Connor Hayward, maybe Pruitt, who did a little bit of that in Atlanta, but was more traditionally an inline wide tight end. I thought somebody would get at it, even as an undrafted type of guy. Just not many of those fullbacks around might be one of the answers for it. And somebody like Keith Smith, who was in Atlanta, is in his 30s, and age becomes a concern there for a fullback and special teamer. BG, do you guys think the offense would benefit using Justin Fields similar to Taysom Hill? Not full Taysom Hill, but we've talked about it before, Dave. There should be, assuming Fields is the backup, some sort of package, some sort of opportunity for him to see the field throughout the season.
Yeah, both in the red zone and between the 20s. You will see him out there. It's just a matter of how much and when, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you, but probably wouldn't go full Hill where he's playing tight end, receiver, and a substantial part of the offense. I would not go that far. He's not repped it and injury to your backup quarterback, and maybe doesn't have quite the physicality and frame in terms of the bulk that Taysom Hill does. Let's see, what else do we have here? Rob with his own over-under. How many kickoff returns do we see in week 1? Over-under 4. I assume he means kickoff return touchdowns. I think
for the season?
For week 1. 4.
Oh, touchdowns?
Yeah, just across the league. I think it'll be under that. I mean,
oh, yeah.
I mean, it'll be more exciting, but the touchback rate, I think they estimate still be 60% or so, and so there will still not be an abundance of returns. And I know that people think, okay, you get through the wall, then you're free, but coverage units aren't going to be stupid. They're not going to just run their entire line in one side-by-side line, full sprint. They're going to hang some guys back as they have done traditionally. The outside guys are going to be more contained and funnel the play inside. So they're not going to be too risky, I think, in terms of the coverage units and how they attack things, which will limit number of big returns.
How many even kickoff returns for a touchdown were there last year?
Not many. It almost certainly was the fewest ever, considering it was so few returns. You can probably, if you're able to look that up, or somebody in the chat can drop it in. I would guess 3, if I had to guess.
I don't remember, and I don't have it pulled up.
Yeah. Anybody in the chat know how many kick return touchdowns there were throughout all of 2023?
I mean, it feels like if you got 4 for the season, that would be something, wouldn't it?
As a team?
As a NFL.
I think we'll see more than that this year across the entire season. You'll probably see 5, 6 plus.
5, 6.
Yeah. Traditionally, in past years, you've gotten above that number. Steel Nation on Fire says there were 3. So assuming that's true, there were 3 kick return touchdowns last season.
Okay.
Any other questions? A joking one, I assume here from John Moore, maybe related. Do you think Dan Moore could try out at wide receiver? Maybe he could be our number 2 wide out. It's looking pretty thin at this point there, John. Tommy and Elizabeth Britton, Justin Fields will be the starter after week 5. I don't know if that comes from Tommy or Elizabeth, but that is their prediction.
All right.
What kind of, how much slack do you think Russell Wilson gets? I think Mark Cabali said he thinks Wilson starts the entire season. Do you think there's a point where if things are going south, they could pull the plug on Wilson?
I think it's one of those things you should certainly know it if you see it. It would have to be, to me, it'd have to be pretty awful by Russell, I think, to get yanked after week 5.
Yeah, but just in general, putting week 5 aside, week 7, week 9, week 13, the year's not going well. Wilson's either not playing well or this team is just not, they're treading water or worse. Could you see a quarterback change?
Oh, I think you could, obviously. I think I don't think you can discount that happening. But the bye week, I guess.
Yeah, it's always kind of the neat time. I feel like we say that every year. The bye week is when they'll make the change. It usually comes sometime before or after. It's a analysis route. Yeah, but it is mid-season. I get the point. Let me put it this way: how injury aside, and Wilson has been a very durable quarterback overall, but that aside, how confident are you Wilson starts the entire season, all 17 games?
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm feeling pretty confident in that. Not going to guarantee it, but feeling confident.
You say not injury aside?
Yeah, put aside injury.
You have to like his chances, right?
And some will say that he's over the hill and they're going to give Fields a chance. And if this team is struggling, and if Wilson is struggling, I'm all for making the change. Wilson's on a 1-year deal. There's no financial tie. Cut him for all I care if it's truly going that poorly.
Right.
But I think they'll be competitive and in it enough that will keep Wilson in the lineup.
Well, I hate trying to look that far away. Just get me through the first 4 weeks.
Same. Josh Moody, do you think Peyton Wilson will start at some point this season? Again, the injury factor is always an impact.
I don't think it's impossible for him, depending on how he progresses in this thing, especially later on in the season, to play alongside Queen.
I'll put it to you this way. I think he could, in the sense of I think he could work his way into nickel packages. And if Pittsburgh were to begin a game, as they often do in nickel, that would give him the technical start, where I could see a Landon Roberts and Queen being the base guys, Wilson and Queen in nickel, and then Queen and dime. I think Roberts will start the year in base and in nickel. He played well last year. It's better in coverage than people gave him credit for. He's not just a rundown thumper, but I could see Wilson work his way into that package throughout the year.
With what he was asked to do and all the injuries that defense had and all, did Landon Roberts overachieve?
I'm sure he would say no. He played as to his expectations, and he was a tough guy that played hurt too, with hip stuff, I think, and ribs and all that kind of stuff, because they just needed him
there
to
was
be
that
out
one
there.
game we thought he was
the short week,
right?
Pat's game,
right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how he played in that one. What was the injury? Was it a hamstring?
Oh, I don't remember. I had to look.
Anyway, but he overachieved probably in my mind and in the minds of most people, but I'm sure he would say that he played to his talent.
Right.
He had a good year, and credit to him for it. All right, any other questions? Bryce, do you think they could pull off a trade for Juwan Jennings or John Mechie? How much draft capital would it take? You've written about Mechie. I think the Texans kind of bloated receiver room, right?
Yeah, look, a guy like Mechie, does he really move? He's got the pedigree, but does he move the needle as far as what you'd want to give up as far as draft capital? No. Jennings, I think, has done enough where you're talking more middle of the line kind of compensation right there. But I mean, the Texans have a lot of wide receivers over there right now, right?
Yeah, Collins and Diggs. Now Tank Dell. Is he going to be ready week 1? I'm not entirely sure his status, but they've certainly loaded up that wide receiver.
Right. Mechie's more of just he's somebody that's still yet to. And didn't he overcome the
leukemia? I think he had.
Right. So there's a lot of questions about Mechie right now. I mean, if you did go out and get a guy like that, I would hope that you wouldn't have a lot of draft capital involved with something like that.
What's the cost for Jennings? Trade-wise?
I probably wouldn't give up anything more than a fourth, I don't think.
Do you think they'd take it? I know we're just guessing as we're doing this whole live stream.
It's hard to say. Obviously they put the second round tender on him, but that's obviously no longer binding at this point. And he still hasn't signed his tender, so he'd have to sign his tender first and then get traded, I believe.
Could he hold out? He could hold out in camp without fines, right? Because he's not under contract.
I'm trying to remember what the rule about restricted and signing their tenders.
That's a good point. Was there a deadline they have to do it by? They can't be compelled to sign their tender, right? I don't know. I'm deferring to you here.
I forget what the rule is on that.
We're in tender talk this Memorial Day. Gather around, hot dogs and burgers as we talk RFA tenders.
Yeah, I'll have to research if there's a deadline or something. For restricted free agents, let's see what this has to say here.
And Russ Obenstein is here, so he says, "What's up, Alex and Dave?" Hello, Russ. Thanks for being here.
Free agent rules for restricted free agents of a player, blah, blah, blah. Restricted free agents with a new club, but that's by April 19th. They would have had to sign an offer sheet by at the old club, blah, blah, blah. I'm still trying to find out if there's a date. I'm going to have to research that.
Okay.
We're running,
We'll talk about
late
that
in this thing.
Wednesday or something. A couple more questions quickly to close things out. Tommy, from Thomas, he says, do you think Calvin Austin going to have a big year? He's got to make the team first. No guarantee to do that. I've not been as high on Austin as others, but we'll watch in camp. We'll wait and see. I would say a big year feels like a stretch for any receiver not named George Pickens, maybe Roman Wilson. Let's see. Should they bring back Quan? That's from Blackjack Novak. His rehab seems to be going well. I just don't see the need. When you draft Peyton Wilson, you have Mark Robinson. Is Quan going to play on special teams? Somebody gets hurt in camp, take a look like last year, but I'm good right now.
Yeah, I'm good as well too, and hopefully this team got snake bit enough at the inside linebacker. You hope that you don't get in a situation where you have to pick up the phone to make that call at this point.
Right. All right, that's going to probably close things out. I believe we've hit all the questions here today, so we appreciate everyone who hung out with us on this holiday, on this Memorial Day, and thank you guys for being here. We'll be back in 2 weeks, have some more video content. We'll certainly be covering OTAs as they take place this Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Dave Bryan, as always, thank you for being here with us as well.
And thank you, Alex, for hosting this and fielding the questions. And thank you, everybody who decided to show up tonight on this Memorial Day Monday. Appreciate you, and peace and love, everyone.
There'll be an archive version of this on Steelers Depot in just a little bit. You want to go back and listen to the whole thing or miss the part of the show, you guys can do so. Again, thank you. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. And, of course, as always, check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.